There was a time when no one saw him. Not because he wasn't there, but because he made himself vanish. His name was Daniel Carter, 28 years old, a data analyst in a mid-sized firm in Chicago. Average height, unremarkable features, soft-spoken to the point of near silence. He walked through life like a ghost, present but never truly seen. Colleagues forgot his name. Friends canceled plans last minute without guilt. Even his own reflection in the mirror seemed to look away. Daniel wasn't broken by trauma or tragedy, at least not the kind you see in movies. No war-zone childhood, no abusive parent shouting curses every night. His wound was quieter, more insidious. It was the slow drip of emotional neglect. A father who measured worth in productivity. A mother who loved but never validated. Good job was rare. Could have done better was routine. So Daniel internalized a terrible truth. My presence is a burden unless I'm useful. His inner world was a labyrinth of second-guessing. Every interaction was dissected like a forensic case. Did I sound stupid? Did they roll their eyes when I spoke? Why did she laugh at his joke but not mine? He didn't just lack confidence, he lacked permission to exist boldly. His mind wasn't his ally, it was his prosecutor. This inner fracture bled into every area of his life. At work, he delivered flawless reports but never presented them. He stayed late, fixed others' errors, and said nothing when credit went to louder colleagues. In relationships, he gave endlessly, texts first, remembered birthdays, listened for hours, but received crumbs in return. He mistook being needed for being valued. And the worst part, he believed he deserved it. Because in his mind, people like him, quiet, thoughtful, hesitant, were background characters in the human story. The heroes were the charismatic, the bold, the effortlessly commanding. Not him. Never him. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't unintelligent. In fact, he was profoundly observant. He noticed micro-expressions, shifts in tone, the hidden hierarchies in group dynamics. But observation without agency is just self-torture disguised as awareness. And so, Daniel lived in a cage of his own making, built from fear, lined with silence, and locked with the belief that he was simply not enough. But cages can be broken, especially when the pain of staying inside becomes greater than the fear of stepping out. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. Daniel had spent 3 months leading a critical project, quietly coordinating teams, troubleshooting errors, smoothing conflicts behind the scenes. He didn't ask for recognition. He just wanted things to work. Then came the quarterly review. His manager stood before the department, smiling, and said, "Thanks to Mark for his outstanding leadership on the Orion project." Mark, who had attended 2 meetings and taken credit for Daniel's slide deck, grinned and accepted applause. Daniel said nothing, nodded, smiled politely. But inside, something snapped. Not anger, not even sadness. It was disgust. Disgust at himself for allowing this, for believing that goodness would be rewarded, that competence spoke for itself, that people would see his value if he just kept his head down and worked harder. That night he sat on his apartment floor, back against the couch, staring at a blank wall. No tears, just a cold, hollow clarity. If I don't change, I will die invisible. This moment wasn't unique to Daniel. It happens to millions. The final betrayal isn't always dramatic. It's the quiet accumulation of being overlooked, used, and forgotten while you give your best. Psychologists call this learned helplessness, when repeated failure teaches the brain that effort is futile. But Daniel's mind, exhausted by passivity, began to rebel. He started reading, not self-help fluff, real psychology, Machiavelli, Robert Greene, Cialdini's Influence, Nietzsche, Stoic philosophy. He devoured case studies on cult leaders, CEOs, politicians, not to admire them but to understand how they controlled perception. He realized something chilling. Power doesn't go to the most deserving. It goes to those who understand human behavior and aren't afraid to use it. The world isn't fair, it's strategic. And if he wanted to be seen, if he ever wanted to lead, to influence, to finally exist on his own terms, he would have to stop waiting for permission. He would have to learn the art of psychological leverage. Not to become cruel, but to survive, to protect himself, to finally claim his place. The first step wasn't confidence. It was awareness. He began journaling, not about his feelings, but about people. Why did Sarah trust James so quickly? Why did the CEO always interrupt timid speakers but lean in when David spoke? What makes someone say yes without thinking? He saw patterns. Human behavior wasn't random, it was predictable, programmable almost. And if behavior could be predicted, it could be guided. This was the birth of his transformation, not with a roar, but with a single silent vow. I will never be invisible again. Daniel knew manipulation, without self-respect, was poison. You can't control others effectively if you despise yourself. The energy leaks. People sense desperation. They feel the neediness beneath the tactics and recoil. So before he learned to influence others, he had to rebuild himself. The first rule: stop seeking validation, start commanding presence. He began with his body, posture, voice, eye contact. He stood straighter, not rigid but grounded. He practiced speaking 20% slower, lowering his vocal pitch slightly. Studies show deeper voices are perceived as more authoritative. He trained himself to hold eye contact for 3-5 seconds before naturally looking away, long enough to signal confidence, not aggression. But physical change was surface level. The real work was internal. He wrote a new personal mantra: "My value is not negotiable." Every morning he stood before the mirror and said it. At first, it felt like a lie. His reflection mocked him, but repetition rewires belief. He also implemented a brutal but necessary practice: the daily audit of self-betrayal. Each night he asked, 1. Where did I shrink myself today? 2. Where did I say yes when I meant no? 3. Where did I give my power away? If he avoided speaking up in a meeting, he'd rehearse the exact words he should have said and say them aloud to the mirror. If he let someone interrupt him, he'd practice a firm but calm response: "I'd like to finish my thought." This wasn't about aggression. It was about boundary integrity. Psychologically, self-respect isn't a feeling, it's a habit. You build it through micro acts of self-honoring. Every time you choose yourself, even slightly, you deposit into your internal bank of worth. Daniel also cut toxic relationships, not dramatically but strategically. The friend who only called when he needed help. He responded slower, set limits. The coworker who dumped extra work on him with a smile. He started saying, "I'm at capacity, can you handle part B?" People tested him at first, some pushed back. But when he held firm, calmly, consistently, they adjusted. That's the secret. People respect consistency more than kindness. He also stopped apologizing for existing. No more "sorry to bother you" or "this might be stupid," but he replaced them with direct, clean statements. "I need your input on this. Here's my perspective." The shift was subtle, but seismic. Within weeks, people began treating him differently. Not because he changed who he was, but because he stopped signaling that he was optional. And once he respected himself, the world had no choice but to follow. Now that Daniel stood taller, he turned to the real work: learning to influence. Not through force, not through lies, but through psychological precision. He studied behavioral psychology like a surgeon studies anatomy. He learned that human decisions aren't driven by logic, they're driven by emotion, ego, fear, and desire for social validation. Here, what he mastered: 5 core levers of influence. 1. Mirroring, the chameleon effect. People trust those who resemble them. Daniel began subtly matching others' speech patterns, posture, and energy. If someone spoke fast and gestured wildly, he'd increase his tempo slightly. If someone was calm and measured, he'd slow down. This triggered unconscious rapport, making others feel, "This person gets me." 2. Strategic vulnerability, the trust accelerator. Counterintuitively, showing controlled weakness builds influence. Daniel would share small, non-damaging insecurities. "I used to struggle with public speaking too." This disarmed others, making them more open and more likely to reveal their own vulnerabilities, which he could later use ethically to guide them. 3. The Benjamin Franklin effect. People like those they do favors for, so Daniel stopped asking for help. Instead, he'd ask others to give him small favors. "Can you send me that template? You're the expert." This made them subconsciously believe they liked him, because their brain rationalized, "Why would I help someone I dislike?" 4. Framing, controlling the narrative. Reality is shaped by language. Daniel learned to reframe situations. Instead of "This project is risky," he'd say, "This is a bold opportunity with high upside." Instead of "I don't agree," he'd say, "That's one angle, have you considered this?" He never lied. He just curated perception. 5. The power of withholding. Scarcity creates value. Daniel stopped being always available. He delayed replies. He didn't over-explain. He let silence hang after statements. This created subconscious tension, making people lean in, eager to fill the void to win his attention. These weren't tricks, they were applied psychology. Daniel practiced daily. In meetings, he'd test one lever. At coffee shops, he'd observe reactions. He kept a manipulation: what worked, what backfired, and why. Crucially, he never used these to harm. His goal wasn't to dominate, it was to level the playing field, to ensure his voice was heard, his ideas respected, his boundaries honored. And it worked. Within 6 months, he was leading cross-departmental initiatives. People sought his opinion. His manager asked, "How did you get the marketing team to cooperate?" They never listened to anyone. Daniel just smiled. "I listened first." But the real shift was internal. He no longer felt like an imposter, because he understood the game and finally knew how to play it. Now, a warning: manipulation is a blade, it cuts both ways. Daniel knew that if he used these tools selfishly, he'd become the very thing he once resented: a user, a predator, a hollow shell of charisma with no soul. So he created a code. 1. Never exploit pain. He'd never use someone's trauma, insecurity, or desperation against them. Influence should uplift, not cripple. 2. Always offer real value. If he guided someone toward a decision, it had to benefit them too. Win-win or no deal. 3. Be transparent about intent when safe. Sometimes he'd say, "I'm asking this because I respect your judgment." Honesty, strategically placed, builds deeper trust than deception ever could. This is the difference between black psychology and dark psychology. Black psychology is ruthless control for personal gain, no regard for others. Dark psychology, when used consciously, is strategic influence with awareness of consequences. Daniel chose the latter. He used mirroring to build rapport with his team, so they'd feel safe sharing ideas. He used framing to sell visionary projects that actually improved company culture. He used strategic vulnerability to create psychological safety in meetings, so quieter voices emerged. His manipulation wasn't about control, it was about catalyzing potential. And people felt it. They didn't feel used. They felt seen, understood, inspired. That's the paradox. The most powerful influencers make others feel powerful. Daniel also learned to spot manipulation directed at him. Once you understand the levers, you recognize them everywhere. Salespeople, politicians, even friends with hidden agendas. This awareness became his armor. He no longer feared emotional predators because he spoke their language. And in this new clarity, he found something unexpected: compassion. He understood that most people aren't evil, they're just untrained in psychology. They manipulate unconsciously through guilt, flattery, passive aggression, because they don't know better. But he did, and that knowledge came with responsibility. With influence came opportunity. Daniel was promoted, then promoted again. By 32, he led a 30-person division. He wasn't the loudest in the room, but when he spoke, silence fell. Why? Because he'd mastered psychological command, not just control. Control is forcing compliance. Command is inspiring voluntary alignment. He built loyalty not through authority, but through perceived empathy. He remembered details: a team member's child's name, a colleague's fear of public speaking. He'd casually mention them weeks later. How did Lily's recital go? Creating deep emotional resonance. He also used selective reinforcement. Praise publicly, correct privately. Tie feedback to identity. You're someone who pays attention to detail. That's why this error surprised me. This triggers cognitive dissonance. They'll work harder to align with their ideal self. But his greatest tool, the illusion of choice. Instead of saying, "Do this," he'd say, "Option A gives us speed. Option B gives us precision, which aligns with our goal." They felt in control, even though both paths led to his desired outcome. This is leadership psychology at its finest, making people believe your vision is their idea. He also mastered emotional packing. If his team was anxious, he'd match their energy. "This is stressful," then gradually shift the tone, "but we've handled harder." This built trust before leading. And in crises, he projected calm, not by suppressing emotion, but by modulating it. He'd acknowledge fear, then reframe. "This uncertainty means we're on the edge of something big." People didn't follow him because he had a title. They followed because he made them feel capable, valued, and part of something meaningful. And that's the ultimate form of control, the kind people thank you for. But power tests you. As Daniel's influence grew, so did the temptations. A rival executive tried to sabotage his project. Daniel had two choices: expose him publicly, risking team morale, or quietly redirect resources, so the rival's failure became inevitable. He chose the latter, not out of malice, but strategy. He let the man dig his own grave, then offered a rescue that bound him to Daniel's agenda. It worked, and in that moment, Daniel felt a chill. This is easy. Too easy. He realized, once you see the strings, it's hard not to pull them. He watched colleagues twist truths, flatter insincerely, weaponize silence. And now, he could do it better, cleaner, more effectively. The line between leader and puppeteer blurred. One night he asked himself, "Am I becoming what I hated?" The answer wasn't simple, because the quiet boy who was ignored did deserve revenge. But the man he was becoming, he had a choice. So he set a new rule: never manipulate for ego, only for vision. If his actions served a greater purpose, building a better team, creating innovative products, empowering others, he'd proceed. If it was just to win or prove something, he'd walk away. This is the crucible of true leadership. Power doesn't corrupt, clarity does. When you see how fragile human perception is, you either use that knowledge to dominate or to elevate. Daniel chose elevation, but he never forgot the darkness. Because the quiet ones, they remember what it feels like to be erased. and that memory fuels a dangerous resolve. Never again. Daniel's transformation wasn't about becoming someone else. It was about uncovering who he'd always been beneath the fear. The observer, the strategist, the quiet force. He realized his sensitivity wasn't weakness, it was intelligence. His ability to read rooms wasn't passivity, it was data collection. He simply needed a new operating system. So he rewrote his psychological code. Old belief, I must be liked to be safe. New code, I must be respected to be effective. Old belief, speaking up is rude. New code, silence is complicity. Old belief, power is for loud people. New code, true power is quiet, precise, and undeniable. This wasn't positive thinking, it was identity engineering. He stopped saying, I'm trying to be more confident. He started saying, I am someone who leads with clarity. And slowly, his nervous system believed it. He also embraced strategic solitude. Unlike extroverted leaders who feed on crowds, Daniel recharged alone, using silence as a weapon, not a prison. In meetings, his pauses became legendary. People leaned in, desperate to fill the void. In negotiations, his calm unnerved opponents into revealing too much. He turned his weaknesses into superpowers. His quietness, mystery. His listening equals intelligence. His restraint equals control. This is the alchemy of personal power. Don't fix your flaws, weaponize them. And Daniel, he became a magnet. Not because he chased attention, but because he withheld it. People craved his approval, his insight, his presence. And now he gave it sparingly, intentionally, powerfully. Let's be clear, nice guys finish last in power games. Daniel learned this the hard way. So he adopted 3 advanced tactics from the Black psychology playbook, used ethically but ruthlessly. 1. The Trojan horse of generosity. Give first, but make the gift memorable and personal. Not a generic thanks, but I remembered you mentioned your daughter loves astronomy. Here, a pass to the planetarium. This creates obligation without demand. The recipient feels indebted and will unconsciously seek to repay you, often in ways you suggest. 2. Controlled information drip. Never reveal your full hand. Share just enough to guide perception, but always retain mystery. Example, in a negotiation, say, I've had other offers, but I believe in this vision. You imply leverage without lying. This triggers scarcity bias. People value what they can't fully access. 3. Identity anchoring. Attach your request to the person's self-image. You're someone who spots talent. That's why I need your eye on this hire. They'll comply to stay consistent with their identity. Psychologists call this self-concept maintenance. Daniel used these not to deceive, but to cut through noise. In a world drowning in distractions, these tactics ensured he was heard, respected, and followed. He also mastered emotional jujitsu, using others' energy against them. When someone was angry, he'd stay calm, making them feel irrational. When someone was arrogant, he'd ask gentle, probing questions, exposing gaps in their logic without confrontation. This wasn't manipulation for its own sake. It was psychological self-defense turned into leadership. And the result? People didn't just obey him. They wanted to follow him, because he made them feel smarter, stronger, and more significant. Let's end with truth. You were never broken. You were dormant. Like Daniel, you may have spent years folding yourself into smaller shapes, apologizing for your presence, dimming your light, believing that if you were good enough, the world would finally see you. But the world doesn't reward goodness. It rewards strategic presence. Your sensitivity, that's not fragility, that's radar. Your quiet observation, that's not passivity, that's reconnaissance. Your past pain, that's not shame, that's fuel. The moment you stop waiting to be chosen is the moment you become the chooser. You don't need to become loud. You don't need to become cruel. But you must learn the rules of the human game because everyone else is already playing. Study psychology. Master your physiology. Rewire your self-talk. Use influence not to control, but to create. And never forget, the most dangerous person in the room is the one who was once ignored. Because they've seen the machinery behind the curtain. They know how fragile perception is. And they've made a silent vow. Never again will I be a footnote in someone else's story. So rise, not with noise, but with precision. Not with rage, but with cold, clear intent. The world needs leaders who understand the shadows, because only they can build light that lasts. You were never meant to stay invisible. You were meant to command the room without saying a word. Now go claim it. Your silence is over.